Hi, everyone. Welcome to the podcast today. I have on Rob Tymec, and he is here to tell us a story today.
I thought I'd tell a goofy story from high school because we were talking the other day and I was going on about how the high school version of me seemed to be the most intelligent version of me. And that I should have always just listened to his wisdom. So I remember I was in my first kind of serious relationship. Sometime during the end of the summer, it failed miserably. We finally just crashed and burned, and it was a big, vicious breakup. Oddly enough, she was much more angry with me than I was with her, even though the reason we broke up was because I caught her cheating. Right? Like, it's always funny how the cheater is more angry, but I guess it's the gift, right? During homeroom period, the teacher took attendance and we did morning announcements over the PA system. Well, I had a friend on student council who was tasked with having to do them, and he hated doing them. So one day I'm trying to get to class and I'm already running a little bit late, and I'm going past the main office and I see him at the little booth that you work the PA system from. And I just go, I bet he'd like me to help him today. I had like two motivations. One was I was already running late for class. So if I stop and do announcements, I'm not going to get in trouble because the teacher won't hear me on the announcements, right? And then I can take my time getting to class after announcements. But more importantly, I realized that ex-girlfriend would absolutely hate to hear my voice over the PA right now. So I was like, I'm going to ask if he wants help with morning announcements just to annoy my ex. So sure enough, I go on and, he's doing it very expressionless because he doesn't want to be doing it. Whereas I'm doing it like a morning talk show. It's like, all right, let's hear it for the girls' junior volleyball team. They won like 14-8 or whatever is a reasonable score in volleyball because I don't follow it, right? And so all day long afterwards, everybody's like, we really loved morning announcements today, Rob. I says, well, I can annoy my ex some more and do it again tomorrow. And by the end of the week, I was actually starting to already create like pre-recorded bits and commercials and stuff. I remember this is the 80s, so I had like a tape recorder at home and like a stereo system. And I got my little sister to play the other role, and we did a whole little skit at home that I pre-recorded and just brought in and played. So we started getting serious very, very quickly. And I have a lot of creative, artistic friends who all of a sudden came aboard too. And so it actually introduced me to the discipline of doing an ongoing series, right? Because all of a sudden we had like legitimate writer rooms. Like we would meet regularly and pitch ideas, and then, okay, you and Joe, you work on that one and I'll work on this one. And we'd come back to another meeting later and look each other's stuff over. And so it turned into a real show where like, we'd have bits prepared, like sometimes weeks in advance, right? Because that's what you do when you're doing an ongoing series. It was great because it helped me so much in my career later with understanding how to schedule things accordingly and work with other writers and other artists in general, because I had people coming on and doing voices with me too. And it was funny because homeroom originally was 10 to 12 minutes. They intentionally stretched it out to 20, 25 minutes just so I could do all my shenanigans on the morning announcements every morning. And then I even came up with this little plan because the idea well would dry out sometimes and we'd get a little bit nervous. And I go, well, I got something that'll give us a little time off. I wouldn't swear, especially since it was a Catholic high school, but I knew I'd say something that I knew was going to get me in a lot of trouble. And then they'd say, we need you to take a break for a while. And that's when one of the most surreal moments in my adolescence happened. Because I got kicked off the air. And if you'll remember back in the 80s, it was a popular movie out but with Robin Williams, Good Morning Vietnam, where he plays a DJ that keeps getting kicked off the air too for what he's saying. And people were already comparing me to him, which was the highest form of flattery because I love Robin Williams. He's one of my favorite actors. But so I get kicked off the air for I think about 2 weeks, and everybody's like, "Oh, great! We can take a rest for a week, and then we'll get together, recharged, and we'll have a bunch more ideas." But within a couple of days, I remember distinctly walking down the hallway, and they had these little bulletin boards every, couple of corridors in my high school where you could just post stuff and you could know what was going on in your school, right? So it was one more way of distributing information back then. And I walked by one of these bulletin boards, and I saw just a stack of papers that had been pinned to it that was just covered in signatures. There's probably about 100, 200 signatures there. And I looked at the top of the paper just to see what everybody was so upset about. And it was put Rob Tymec back on the morning announcements.
Oh.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, wow. And that's when I realized just how far reaching this whole thing had become, that like people were really, really into it. Like to me, it was just this goofy thing that I was doing. And I liked that I was doing it without thinking. I was just enjoying it so much that I wasn't like, why aren't I getting paid for this or something? I just was doing it for the love of it at the time. Nowadays, of course, I do things for the love of it, but that there's a paycheck attached to it too. But that really was sort of the first time that I was like, I've created something that's grown beyond me. And then the best part was that I walked down the hallway a bit more and saw like another bulletin board with another petition on it full of signatures. And then I walked to another one and saw a third one. And that's when I was like, okay, I got to start putting some bogus signatures on me. So like Adolf Hitler wanted me to get back on the air, and so did various other historical celebrities. Julius Caesar, I think, was another one that I signed on it. And so sure enough, within a couple of days, like the school administration even was like, okay, we were going to say 2 weeks. Can you come back next week? Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, my writers are going to be mad at me. But I also knew that I should ride the wave. So it became a thing where I just, to this day, people still come up to me and go, I still remember morning announcements. You were so great. I loved it. You really, there were days where I was just the most miserable person in the world, and your morning announcements cheered me up and made life bearable or whatever.
Yeah, wow.
So, but I just always loved the fact, and it taught me an interesting life lesson. Like, it all stemmed from me just wanting to irritate an ex. Mm-hmm. Right. And that's what happens sometimes. Sometimes we don't walk in with the best of motivations, but it grows into something else that's bigger than us. And you just sort of embrace it and run with it.
Yeah. Well, you never know what's going to happen or what's going to come out of anything.
Yep.
So do things.
Exactly. You're not going to get anything done just staying at home, being scared of putting a toe in the pool. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you started the morning announcements, did you just kind of, what's that saying? Ask for forgiveness, not permission? Did you just go off the walls and just start making it your own thing?
A little bit of both. Like some stuff, if I knew it was straddling the line, so to speak, then I was like, well, let's just see if I can get away with it. Because sometimes it was even a matter of like certain people just didn't happen to be listening to that day. So they didn't get upset about it. They were the people that can do something about it, right? Other times I was like, okay, I think I better definitely ask if I can get away with this one. They eventually appointed someone from the administration that was sort of in charge of looking over the material and stuff, because we did go pretty far sometimes. I do recall, I chalk it up as one of the most tasteless things I've ever done. I did a parody of the Kennedy assassination. Mm-hmm. On the air. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We assassinated our student council president instead. But yeah, I'm old, but I'm not that old. I wasn't around when Kennedy was shot, but some teachers really reprimanded me for it afterwards. But I just saw it as satire at the time because I was like 16 years old and just wanted to satirize everything I could around me.
And push boundaries.
Yeah. Push boundaries, I guess. I don't know. I think it was more just a case of being juvenile. I do count that experience as like a vital building block in teaching me discipline, especially, right? Like the whole idea that we were like, okay, every other Thursday we get together and we go over our stuff. And you didn't want to show up with no material written, right? Like you would get berated, not even necessarily by me. And I was considered the head of the whole operation, but like my writers were so fiercely dedicated that they would yell at the lazy writer for me. And I'd be like, good, I don't have to be the jerk here. So yeah, it is something fairly, I would say, instrumental in my career.
Yeah, to have that experience so young, especially when you're so soft and malleable, is really interesting. Would you say you knew you were on that career path before you did the radio announcements, or did that did that have that impact on you where you're like, this is cool?
I was showing aptitudes, like even way back in grade school, like they were having me do like these gigantic presentations for the school. And I was like, maybe grade 5, grade 6. That was usually something that was given to like a grade 8. Mm-hmm. And they were like, well, no, this kid's a huge ham. Let's just have him do it. I got into performance art, particularly live, because I was actually very, very timid and shy as a young kid. I still get a little bit of anxiety, but I think I was full-blown agoraphobic, like when I was really young. And that idea of presenting to an audience allows you to feel like you're in the crowd, but not in the crowd at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So the first time I had to go up and do something in front of a class, my teachers who had seen how horribly timid I was were just like, oh, this is going to be a train wreck. But when I got up there, I immediately got that feeling of, oh, I feel like I'm in this crowd, but at the same time, I have this comfortable barrier, which is I'm presenting something. And I fell in love with it instantly. And all of a sudden, this whole other personality came out of me. So pretty much from, I'm going to say 6 or 7 onwards, everybody was like, you're going to be an actor, aren't you? And I was like, I guess. I still tried to have a period in my 20s. Most of my 20s, I tried to have a normal life. And then I got back into all of this nonsense in my 30s. And because I just, you tend to, when you hit a new decade, you tend to contemplate a pivot. I was having a lot of success just sort of working a kind of upper middle management job. And it was going well. But I was just like, is this what I really want to do with myself for the rest of my life? And I was like, no, it's not. It's, you've known what your calling's been since a very young age. So why don't you get back into it?
So was that an abrupt quit, or did you kind of have a job on the side when you were exploring the acting?
Yeah. Well, that's a funny thing that you ask, because I do have people that always come up to me and go, how did you do it? Because I've been full-time at this for almost 25 years now. My last day of a real job was like 2002. So it's been a while. So they're always like, they always think there's like a secret, like I know an algorithm or something, right?
Yeah.
It just, I was like, get a real job where you're working 40 hours a week, do all that you love in your spare time as a part-time job, which will only take 20 hours a week. You work 60-hour weeks for about 3 to 5 years, but then all of a sudden that part-time income is exceeding your full-time income, and you can quit the full-time job, and now it's only a part-time obligation. And nobody likes that answer. But it's really what you got to do. You just got to grind. I was lucky. I only had to do it for about 3 years. And even then, like the 3rd year was done as like a precaution, because I really was making the income already by the end of my 2nd year. But I was like, let's do 1 more year to make sure that it's stable income. I was ridiculously burnt out on so many occasions during those 3 years. But to me, it seemed like the only way to do it, as far as I was concerned.
Most of this work that you've done was in Windsor area?
Yeah, pretty much. Windsor, Essex. I do wander into Chatham, Kent a little bit. Actually, I've done a lot more of just like teaching workshops up in Toronto, because then I'm just hired to go in, teach the workshops for the weekend and come home, right? Whereas most of the time, they're not going to give you a role without an audition, up in Toronto at least. Down here, they're like, oh, you're that guy. We need you for a show. Okay. Did you want me to read for it? No, we know you can do it. We saw you. That's one of the advantages of Windsor. It's a smaller area. You start making an impact, people start noticing it fairly quickly. Whereas somewhere like Toronto, you're a drop in a bucket. For instance, I haven't updated my CV in probably nearly a decade.
Okay.
Because nobody asks me for it. In Toronto, you're an actor. They're not interested in you writing. They're not interested in you directing. You're just going to go and act. Or if you are a writer, then you're not acting, or so on and so on and so on. They don't usually let you cross over too much, at least not at the beginning. Whereas again, here, I love that I have organizations that are just like, they don't even say, can you build a show from scratch? They know I can build a show from scratch. So they just commission me, give me a budget to work with and everything.
That was my next question. Yeah, you're predicting it.
It's my telepathy.
You said you act in live shows. So what do you write or direct? Also live or just a variety?
I'm a playwright for the most part. I've done some screenwriting. I was even lucky at one point. I had a couple of friends that had broken into LA and were submitting to like real production companies. And the thing is, when you're a new writer, they're not so much interested in your ideas. They're interested in giving you, the executives want to give you an idea and have you flesh it out. Well, neither of these guys really knew how to write to spec, which is where you are given the central premise and you develop it. But they'd remembered working for me years previously, and they knew that I could write to spec quite easily. I almost prefer it because it's like, well, they did half the job for me, right?
Yeah.
But most writers get thrown off by that. They want to work from their own ideas. So they came back and found me and said, we desperately need you, because they just lied to all these executive producers. They were like, we want a movie with this in it. And they're like, yeah, we can write that, sure. And then they were just like, call Tymec tomorrow. We need him now. So I did get, it was cool. It's nice bragging rights to say that I have submitted to major production companies in LA.
Mm-hmm.
It's that idea, like we were saying earlier, where you just don't know where something's going to go. Like these guys had just acted in I have my own theater company too. That's where I do a lot of the writing and directing, of course. So they just worked in my theater company for me for a couple of years, and they remembered that they'd done some work that was to spec. So that just stayed with them. And as they moved on into their careers and broke all kinds of ground that I wasn't breaking, and they still came back and found me.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what you kind of do in life, is just put your best foot forward and hope for the best.
Yeah.
And don't do parodies of the Kennedy assassination.
Yes.
That's
also that.
Yeah. That's another valuable lesson I've learned.
So you have been a creative in Windsor for many, many years. Wow. And I am a new creative, I would say. What are your favorite things to do in Windsor that kind of explore on the creative side?
Well, you doing open mics is a very good move. I got into spoken word quite a bit a few years ago. There was a really great spoken word movement in this area for a while. It's kind of whittled down to maybe just one event now. But, you're just running into so many people and being impressed by what they're doing, and they inspire you. Same with like stand-up comics have a lot of open mics. You got certain artsy-fartsy bars downtown that have all kinds of interesting things going on.
So open mic, comedy, stand-up. Do you do stand-up too?
I MC for stand-up nights.
Okay.
Sometimes. I haven't much lately because it's a pretty easy job, so they usually just get an actual stand-up to do it. I keep thinking of doing a proper set, but I'm not passionate enough about stand-up. Mm-hmm. And I admire stand-up comics, because to get even a good, like, tight 6, as they call it, a good 6 minutes of material that nobody will not laugh at, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's what a tight 6 is. It's universal in its appeal. Everybody's going to be entertained by it. That can take like almost a year.
Oh, wow.
Right. And I mean, I have certain advantages with my experience that I could probably cut some corners and get to my tight 6 a little bit faster, but I'd still just, having to hit those open mics over and over and over and go, oh, that sucked. Let's try something else. That sucked too. Let's try something else. Right. I don't have it in me for stand-up. That's the other thing that I've learned is, be flexible, try some new things, but also understand your limits. Mm-hmm. Or if the passion just isn't quite there. Like I was saying earlier, I'm not a big film person because it doesn't feel like acting to me half the time. And it's like, we're going to shoot you from this angle, just say the same line 4 times, and then we'll change the angle, say that same line 4 times again. And I'm like, I like the immediacy of live. I mean, you still go through that rehearsal process, but the rehearsal process is fun. You're just goofing off with your friends half the time. You're getting the work done, but you're goofing off a lot too.
Yeah.
That idea of I go out, I do it linear, there's no opportunity to do retakes. I love that kind of thrill.
For your creative work, are you exercising your creative muscle every day?
Every minute.
Every minute?
Yeah. Like even now, like I'm like, my mind is racing. Like, she's got a good question for me. What's the most entertaining, interesting, engaging way to give an answer, rather than just be like, yes, no, I love cats. Thanks. Right. And that's kind of where I'm at. Like I mentioned Robin Williams earlier, and like, I don't quite move at his speed, but I don't think anybody did really. But he had such a tremendous effect because my brain was already moving kind of at that speed, close to it at least. And to see someone monetize it, even for lack of a better term, right? Like made me go, okay, I have this weird brain that doesn't seem to be like anybody else's brain around me, particularly since I was growing up in this rural area back in the 80s and the 70s, right? So I was finally like, oh, here's someone who's like me and he's successful with it, right? It's the same thing with George Lucas and Star Wars. Like I was the perfect age for Star Wars when it came out. And I had this wild, vivid imagination that everybody was sort of looking at me like, he's a witch, burn him, right? Because again, this is 40, 50 years ago in this small rural town. And I would be like, wouldn't it be cool if aliens had a bar to go to, right? And they'd be like, what? Are you crazy? And then sure enough, I go see Star Wars and there's this bar full of aliens. And I was like, again, it was like him saying, it's okay to have this crazy imagination. You can do something with it.
Yeah.
So there's a couple pivotal figures like that just, I was the perfect time for them to be successful and for me to see their success. Jim Henson would be another great example of that, right? I don't pretend to be as creative as any of them. They're geniuses. But they at least still said, hey, you can be like us and do something with it rather than just try to fit in.
They set the example.
Yep, exactly.
Because you need the role models like that, because you need to see it to believe that it's even possible for yourself, right? So just having them there really opened doors for a lot of people.
I think so. And even retrospectively, you have, I run into people way younger than me that still watch the old episodes of like The Muppet Show. Of course, there's huge Star Wars fans still out there that are still being affected by them, by his work. People are even finally admitting they like the prequels.
I thought that was the cool thing, to like the prequels.
The prequels would be 1, 2, and 3.
Oh, okay.
4, 5, 6 is what everybody says.
Yes, that's the cool part, yeah.
Whereas both of them pretty much strike me as being more or less equal. Prequels have better special effects. That's about it.
Yeah.
Better lightsaber duels.
So if people are loving this conversation, they want to learn more about you.
Okay.
Where can they find you?
I've kept it simple. I just have a Facebook page for my theater company, and my theater company is called Monkeys with a Typewriter. Multiple monkeys, one typewriter. Okay. Are
you working on any projects right now?
Not particularly. I have slowed down a lot because I'm down to one parent now, and so I've moved because I work very little. I have time to take care of my mother, so I'm mainly home taking care of mom. And artists oftentimes when they do start getting successful, just get really stupid with their money. And I always say that time I spent in my 20s having a normal life taught me financial management a bit. So when I did finally start doing some shows that were making me a lot of money, I put a bunch of that money aside so that I barely have to work at this point, and I can't just focus on being there for my mom. So yeah, my friends want to punch me because I'll grumble like, oh, I worked a whole 6 hours this week. And they're like, go to hell and die, Rob Tymec. And I'm like, well, I did do 60-hour weeks for 3 years straight. Yeah. Well, you were like, why aren't you out partying with us more? And I was like, because I can see a long-term goal. So yeah, I do what I call my high yield shows, which are shows that make me a lot of money. We just got through October not too long ago, and that's when I do all my ghost walks and stuff, and just basically get paid to tell ghost stories in general. And I've got about 100 of them bobbing around in my head at any given time. So I did that. I've gotten really attached to the Prohibition era. I was involved for quite a few years with a show called the Rum Runners Tour, which was a theatrical bus tour where you have characters from the 1920s. I eventually spun off into my own little thing with the blessing of the producer from Rum Runners. I didn't want to compete with them, but now I just do this one-person show called Bootlegger Tales, and that people in Windsor are fascinated with Windsor during the Prohibition era. So every time I put it on, I get like a couple hundred people showing up. I just have a Facebook page for my theater company, and my theater company is called Monkeys with a Typewriter. Multiple monkeys, one typewriter.
Okay.
Well over a decade.
Are you working on any projects right now?
Always. People love their ghost
particularly.
stories, too.
I have
Yeah.
slowed down a lot.
I've got my
because,
other passion projects
I'm-
too.
I'm down
still
to
get me
one
an
parent
okay
now.
crowd. And so there's another one-person show that I do that's all about geek culture that makes me quite a bit of money too. That you would probably only half like because you didn't even know what the prequels were.
Yeah. Wouldn't classify myself as a huge geek.
No, that's fine. But I am. So I capitalized on it, and geeks love coming to see it because they get all the inside jokes, right?
Yeah.
So that's another one that whenever I bring it out tends to do well too. I'm favoring a lot of one-person shows too because they're just easier for me to put together, and actors are pains in the ass to deal with. I've been getting direct sponsorship from Sandwich Town BIA for the last couple of years for the Ghost Walks. And so now they're putting it all on their promotional platforms. And they set up an event, and I was seeing like 3,000 to 4,000 people engaging. And I was like, and I still had some huge crowds. They still mic'd me because I wouldn't be able to shout over 300 people outside. But I was still just like, there's no way 3,000 people are taking my walk. But it's still overwhelming to see. You're just like, wow.
I mean, on Facebook, I have, I think, almost 200 people that marked interested. I trust that it's going to be a good event. I just let it flow, and it is what it is.
Yeah, and that's, again, the best approach you can have to that sort of event, having done a bunch of them myself.
Good, thank you.
Not to make myself sound like old wise Rob or whatever.
I trust your experience.
Well, still, I notice there's a lot of people in the arts that are just dying to be mentors, right? And so they dispense a lot of advice that you didn't really ask them for, right? So I try not to be one of those people.
I'm open ears.
Okay. Well, and you ask questions. That's like I remember earlier you were saying, what can I get involved with? And I was like, okay, she's asking now. I'll give. That's how I like to work. If you're asking me, if you're seeking feedback, I'm more than happy to give it. If you're not, I can sometimes even just watch you flounder and go, they're drowning, but they're not asking me to toss them a lifeline, so I'm just going to let them drown. If people start picking my brains enough, I'm like, okay, we need to sit down and talk about a consultation fee, right? This advice should not be free for too long either, I believe.
Yeah, I agree.
My knowledge and experience has value to it. I like to not just be one of those critical assholes that's only telling you what you're doing wrong. I always believe that you need that positive reinforcement too. So we'll sit down and we'll go through both. And that's why I get a lot more work as a consultant than a lot of other people do, because a lot of other people do see that as just an opportunity to go, you're absolute shit, right? Let me tell you exactly every little thing that you did wrong. I didn't ever think people would pay me money to just tell them what to do, basically, right? But that's even what directing is. But I do like to make it into like an open forum where it's like, okay, do you have any ideas of how you might want to see that scene?
Yeah.
And again, I've asked them, right? There's quite a bit of stuff in my plays now that I've had to just own up to when people go, I love that you did this in that show. And I was like, that was actually their idea over there.
That's great.
Yeah. Well,
that.
I mean, nobody likes seeing their ideas get stolen. And I've had my ideas stolen left and right. So yeah, I try to be very careful about that. If I'm getting complimented for someone else's work, then I'm very quick to go, especially if that person's right there. And I know so many artists that are like, oh, he's standing right there, but I'm still going to take ownership for it, right? So having been in that other place, I try to be empathic.
Well, Rob, it's been a fun conversation.
We've rambled on quite a bit, haven't we?
Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.